pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for invocation by our own town manager, Rick Davis.
Our eternal Heavenly Father, we're grateful to gather today as civic leaders, as citizens, to discuss some of the matters that concern this town. We're thankful for the selfless contributions of our elected officials and our citizen volunteers and all those who work so hard together to make this such a special place to live. We're grateful for the liberties we enjoy in this free land. We pray humbly that Thy Spirit might be with us during this time, that we might discuss the affairs of this town in a manner that's pleasing unto Thee, might come to decisions that benefit our citizens, that they might know of our care and concern for their lives. We pray humbly for the safety of our town and our nation and guidance of our leaders nationally and locally. And these things we pray for humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rick. Roll call, please, Beth.
Mayor Schlum?
Here.
Vice Mayor Archambault?
Here.
Councilmember Dickey?
Here.
Councilmember Cantino? Here. Councilmember Hanson? Here. Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Leger?
Here. Thank you. First item on the agenda is a reading of proclamation proclaiming August 2009 as Drowning Impact Awareness Month, and most of you saw the Southwest Ambulance out there outside to signify the importance of keeping our mind on watching kids and others around water. So I'll read the proclamation for our community here. Drowning Impact Awareness Month. Whereas Drowning Impact Awareness Month will raise awareness that the number and impact of child drownings in Arizona affects everyone, and whereas the drowning incidents in Arizona take the lives of the equivalent of a classroom of children each year, and whereas a child drowning can happen to any family regardless of education, race, or socioeconomic background, and whereas families can take simple steps to protect their children around water to avoid the tragedy of unnecessary loss of life, and whereas water safety remains a priority for Arizona families, communities, and government, and whereas keeping children healthy and safe is the goal of hospitals, fire departments, and other prevention institutions in Arizona, and raising awareness will increase understanding and education of effective ways to prevent drownings. Now therefore, I, J.T. Schlum, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, do hereby proclaim August 1 through 31, 2009 as Drowning Impact Awareness Month in Fountain Hills, dated the 6th day of August, 2009. And I want to thank those that came out today to signify Drowning Awareness Month, those impacted here nearby or nearly impacted in our community nearby that I was able to meet prior to our meeting. And also we received a ribbon to signify Drowning Avoidance Month and awareness of drowning prevention as well today. So thank you to those that came out, and I appreciate the focus on this item that's important not just to Arizona but to our entire country and the children in our country. So thank you very much. Remind everyone and council to speak into your microphones. I was reminded, so we must have not done that at some point on the recording of one of our past meetings, so please remember to speak into your microphone when you wish to address us. The next item is a presentation by Don Rearick, Planning and Project Management Division with Maricopa County Flood Control District regarding public outreach and education. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Several months ago, the staff had the pleasure of meeting with the Maricopa County Flood Control District, and you may have seen a brochure in your boxes shortly after that, and we talked about the benefits that we have through the Flood Control District and thought it would be a nice gesture to talk about those benefits, and so we asked them to come out, and Don Rearick is with us tonight, and so I'll turn it over to Don and have him give you his presentation. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mr. Rearick. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that, council members. As Tom mentioned, we met with the town engineer, town manager about 2 months ago. We made this presentation. Our goal is to make this presentation to all of the agencies that we deal with, the cities and towns in Maricopa County. We've accomplished 23 of those 25 meetings. We have 2 to go. This slide before you tells you our mission statement and our vision statement. And essentially it results in our objective of reducing injury and death and property losses through flooding, and to accomplish that in a fiscally responsible manner. And since 1997, we have also tried to implement as much as we can multi-use landscaping and aesthetics so that our projects don't necessarily look like the Los Angeles River, but rather they're a complement to our built environment. How do we accomplish these tasks? We identify flood hazards through what we call area drainage master studies and floodplain delineations. We regulate floodplains in unincorporated county, and through IGAs, or intergovernmental agreements, we also provide provide service to 12 communities in the Valley, for example, Buckeye, Guadalupe, and the city of Mesa. We have a pretty extensive education program. In fact, if you watch channels 5, 12, or 15, you may have seen our public service announcements, the stupid motorist law, don't drive across flooded washes. That is an outcome of the efforts made by our PIO staff. We generally are the lead for construction on all of our capital programs. Occasionally, a lead agency other than us will take the construction management role. Generally speaking, all of our capital program projects are constructed by the district. We have an extensive flood warning and alert system. We have over 500 rain gauges, stream gauges, and weather stations covering over 15,000 square miles, both in the county and north of the county where the primary contributing watersheds are located. And we have an extensive operation and maintenance program. As you can imagine, a flood control facility is only as good as its maintenance so that it does the job it's designed to do. The 4 slides that you see before you represent our 20-year goal of implementing our programs and continuing those in education, identification, regulation, and remediation, to continue the public education process, to have studied all of the watersheds in the county at least one time, to have done the appropriate delineations, and as much as we can incorporate our CIP program into the urbanized and metropolitan areas. Most all of our capital program work, many of our studies and our planning efforts are partnerships with the communities, towns, agencies that we work with. In the example of Fountain Hills, that partnership resulted in the rehabilitation of Golden Eagle Park Dam. It resulted in an area drainage master plan and 2 floodplain delineation studies. Our engineering services are provided through our engineering division. Now, they support all of the technical aspects of the work we do, reviewing studies, reviewing designs, and occasionally doing in-house design work. We will offer, subject to staff availability, courtesy technical reviews. If, for example, your engineering department had a study that they felt needed an outside set of eyes to look at, make that request, subject to staffing availability. We'd be happy to do that for you. We have a 6,500 document engineering library. About a third of those documents have been scanned. They are available online, those that have been scanned. Our entire library resource list is also available on our website. And we have real-time weather, rainfall, and stream gauge information that is also available on our website. This slide represents a clip of the alert station map. We focus in obviously on the Fountain Hills area. The various blue, turquoise, yellow, and green dots represent stream, rainfall, and weather stations, and some combination stations that we gather the data from that I mentioned a moment ago. Our Floodplain Management Services Division, formerly known as the Regulatory Division, they provide, they provide grading and drainage permit reviews in the unincorporated county. They also provide that service for the 12 communities for which we have intergovernmental agreements to do that. They will make flood zone determinations for people who are interested to know whether they're in a floodplain or not. They will provide technical support to the flood insurance programs, the community rating system program, and we have what's called the Flood-Prone Properties Assistance Program. That's a buyout program, a voluntary buyout program of residential properties that are located in floodways. And our public outreach is provided by our PIO staff. They support all of the activities that we undertake through public meetings. They would be happy to meet with any civic, community, business organizations. They do that quite often to tell our story, what it is that we do. They would be happy to come to the town anytime if that request is made. They, as I mentioned, work with the PSAs on local television stations, and they have an extensive series of published materials that they distribute for flood awareness. Tom asked me to keep it to 5 to 7 minutes. I hope I succeeded, Tom. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to try to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ehrig from council? Well, thanks again for coming out.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next item on our agenda is Department Division Informational Overview of Services Provided. Ms. Lori Gary, our Economic Development Administrator. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you, Mayor. Just give me a moment and I will call up my presentation.
All right,
here.
to do that, I want to signify another announcement just to recognize what we on council know the public may not be aware of, is that last year, under our new town manager and excellent staff, made an announcement recently that we finished in the black our fiscal year, and I wanted to lift the staff up for being innovative and doing a good job this last year in a difficult circumstances. So nice work, staff and citizens, for stepping up and volunteering, filling in where we could use you to help offset some costs, and just for getting innovative and doing a lot of hard work and making some tough decisions. It was a tough year, and I know we have a tough year ahead of us, but you got through this one, and we encourage you to continue doing great things such as you had. I know Julie's not here, but I know she was a big part of that as well. So thank you from the town council and the citizens of Fountain Hills for sure. How was that for filling in some space? Any more time?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Schlum and Vice Mayor Archibald and members of the council. My name is Lori Gary, and I am the Economic Development Administrator for the town of Fountain Hills. And this evening I was just asked to give you an overview of what this position does. And what I'm going to do actually this evening is talk about economic development, what it is, what it does for the community, what this position does, and lastly, how it impacts your goals for our community, those goals that you have articulated. In order to understand the economic development need for a community, we have to understand where we are in our life cycle. And communities, just like products, have life cycles. And so when we take a look at where we are in our life cycle, you know, we are not necessarily a rural, remote area, nor are we an inner city area. But taking a look at where we are in our life cycle, which is more of a maturing urban city, that calls for us to sustain our economic health, sustain our tax base, and also the quality of life for our citizens. And in order to do that, we need to invest in attracting companies that generate revenue. We need to invest in retention, and we also need to invest in creating competitive advantages. And by doing that, that will provide the financial strength to support and service the needs of our community. Our economic development program, based on that, is focused in 3 areas: business attraction, business retention, and business vitality. And now I'd just like to go into, now we know where we are in our life cycle, the 3 pillars or 3 focus areas of our program. I'll just give you a brief overview of what this position does in each of these areas. Business attraction. This position would identify the community needs, and you've heard me talk a little bit about gap analysis. It would identify target business sectors. We can't identify target business sectors until we know what our needs are. This position would also prepare outreach strategies and targets. Prepare informational materials. Many people think preparing informational materials is first, but we can't do that until we understand what the needs of our community is and what our target businesses are. And lastly, in the business attraction area, this position would implement the outreach. Secondly, in the second pillar that I'd like to focus on is business retention. And this position would then identify business sectors and businesses that are critical to the town's successes. For example, we have about 1,300 businesses in the town of Fountain Hills. We can't necessarily visit every single one of them, so we need to focus our time and effort. And so in order to focus our time and effort, we need to understand and identify the businesses that are critical to our success. This position would then develop a business visitation program, again, identify the businesses, determine how we would do that outreach. Is it a survey instrument? Is it one-on-one visitation? And we develop that program. Then we'd compile and do the analysis of all the feedback that we get from the businesses. And lastly, this position would then identify items that came out of that analysis that we might want to consider that would help and assist and support our business sector. And that might be, for example, policies or procedures, things that we might want to change, things that we might want to do better, things that we haven't considered that we might want to do based on that feedback. The third pillar is business vitality. And the business vitality sector is when this position would work with and partner with local groups and organizations to support the success of our local businesses. And I've just listed a few here on the PowerPoint. That might be the Town Center Group. That might be Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation. That might be the Chamber of Commerce. That might be the Visitors Bureau. Although I said here we'd work with local partners and organizations, we can't forget, those are internal organizations. We can't forget that there are external organizations that we might want to work with and partner with. For example, the SBDC, which would be the Small Business Development Center, the Arizona Department of Commerce might have some programs that we might want to partner with to assist in business vitality. By working all three of these pillars, then this position would accomplish some of those economic development goals that you all have identified, and that would be job creation, job retention, diversifying our tax base, which is very important for our community, increasing the property values in our community, the expansion of wealth in Fountain Hills, economic stability, the economic stability of our community, economic self-sufficiency, and last but not least, those goals would help us enhance the quality of life for our citizens. And that concludes my presentation on economic development and what this position does.
Lori, I mean, a couple of people aren't familiar. Some of the things you mentioned talked about this position would do this, but you're undergoing all these items yourself at this point.
That is correct.
Making some good progress.
That is correct, Mayor.
And you're doing a great job from what I can hear and what I've seen. Your involvement in working with the chamber, is terrific through and out there in the community. But you really bring in a host of experience to our community in setting us up for a tremendous future. And I think we'll be well poised when the economy turns around. Even though we are still having businesses open here in our town, you're helping us a great deal. But you're doing all these things already, and you have such a good amount of experience. It's just really appreciated that you're helping us get our feet under us with economic development. Any questions, Council? All right. Thank you very
Mayor,
much, Lori.
and members of the Council. And I'd like to just say it certainly is a pleasure to be doing this for the town of Fountain Hills. Thank you.
Important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
All right. Anyone from the public? Bev, call to the public.
No, Mayor.
All right. Move on to our consent agenda. Request a motion as listed to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
How about a second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting the I'm sorry. Roll call, Bev. Thank you. Mike?
Councilmember Dickey? Aye. Mayor Schlum?
Aye.
Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson? Aye. Councilmember Cantino?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Archambault?
Aye.
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you very much. All right, move on to the regular agenda. First item is presentation by Audra Kester-Thomas, Chair of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, and discussion of the Strategic Plan Update Working Paper Number 1, Strategic Plan Gap Analysis. Rick.
So, Mayor, as you know, we come near the end of the term that was assigned to our first strategic plan. The strategic plan, for the most part, completed, realized, but during that time, the world's turned around a couple of times, and as the gap analysis has begun to come forth, the feedback from the public, it's clear that there are some new and existing priorities that we are going to need to address in the future. I want to publicly say what an honor it is to work with the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, and under Audra's leadership, I think we have made tremendous, they have, not me, but they have made tremendous progress in, I think, putting together a quality product. The first manifestation of this product is presented to you here tonight, and hope you'll be as pleased as I was with it.
Thank you. Welcome, Audra. I see some more back in the gallery. Thanks for coming, and thanks for your hard work on this first step.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public, it's my pleasure to be here in front of you to present the first milestone effort of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission in an effort to update your strategic plan. I do want to recognize some folks in the audience. I have 3 members of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission with me this evening. Commissioner Alan Magazine, who rumor has it has flown in from New England for this effort specifically this evening. Charlotte McCluskey, and our Youth Commissioner, Katie Meyer. I'm pleased to have those folks with me in supporting this effort this evening, and we're pleased to be here to present this document to you. I'd also like to take the moment to thank Shauna Williams, who was supposed to be enjoying this from the comfort of her own home and is here joining us in the audience. Together with the town manager, has provided SPAC enormous support. We consider Shauna a team member with SPAC, and she certainly has provided her help, guidance, and ultimately great efficiency to making this process stay on time. Tonight's presentation will review what a strategic plan is, of course, the strategic plan that was created in 2005. It will review the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, the strategic plan update process, and ultimately our first working paper or milestone effort of the update process, and finally outline what our next steps are. What is a strategic plan? A strategic plan is what an organization uses ultimately to develop goals and objectives and strategies to implement its future. A vision, of course, is the ideal desired condition of a community or entity. Goals, objectives, policies, strategies, actions, all of that nomenclature talks to ways, of course, to achieve a vision. How is a strategic plan used? It's integrated into the day-to-day activities of an organization, and that includes a community such as Fountain Hills. Council uses it to provide strategic direction, prioritize expenditures, and evaluate proposals, while staff uses it ultimately to develop those proposals that they bring to you. Strategic plan must remain current and relevant in order to remain relevant through regular review and updates. What a municipality does isn't unique. You have a charter, you know what your mission is. It's how a municipality ultimately fulfills that mission. Strategic plan helps to identify how. And so that's why a strategic plan is so important for a municipality and any organization to ensure it's fulfilling a quality mission. The original strategic plan was developed really out of partnership, and SPAC feels quite confident that they want to continue that tradition of partnership. Born really out of the Fountain Hills Civic Association in partnership with the town, a technical advisory committee was identified of citizens here in our own community, and with the help and guidance of over 1,600 residents of Fountain Hills, ultimately developed the original strategic plan. In 2006, or starting in 2006, after adoption by Town Council in December of 2005, and ultimately the creation of the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, the town started implementing its strategic plan. And of course, we now here are at our update process. Your current strategic plan is identified, or grouped, I should say, into kind of three kinds of elements. The first is focus areas, and those are topic areas or ways to categorize and group issues. Then you have strategic priorities, and those are broken into two kinds with the current strategic plan, ones that were to be completed in the first 2 years or through 2007, and ultimately a second grouping which would be complete through 2010. You have strategic activities, which are those kinds of projects, programs, and policies that were suggested ultimately to implement those strategic priorities identified. As I mentioned already, the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, or SPAC for short, was created as a strategic action out of the original strategic plan. In December of 2005, when Council adopted the original strategic plan, it also, in the same resolution, established the Strategic Planning Council and its mission, or with a mission, for the SPAC to continually educate and inform the public on implementation of the strategic plan, as well as to update the strategic plan. And of course, that's why I'm here this evening. I've already mentioned a few of our SPAC commissioners, which are in the audience this evening, but it's a commission made up of 8 individuals, including a youth commissioner, which I prize personally. Being part of the Strategic Planning Commission, it's a really unique element of a public governing body, and Katie is representing that position currently, and I'm delighted that she's here this evening. But we have 4 other members who are not here this evening, and all of them have contributed immensely to this update process. I've joked with Commissioner Magazine about I don't know if he knew that he'd be working so hard when he signed up for this volunteer commission responsibility, but from New England this summer has helped us tremendously, as have the other 7 commissioners. So, what is the strategic plan update? Well, why are we doing it, first of all? If it wasn't already enumerated, we're doing it because we're at the end of the planning horizon. The current strategic plan was intended to go through 2010, and on the eve of 2010, the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission has undertaken this effort. We spent, I must say, several months, probably 6 months, devising a strategy on what we were going to do as we reached this planning horizon. And in fact, over the course of the end of last year and early into this year, underwent a reconnaissance effort to try to garner some idea of how we would best approach this process. And ultimately presented to you, as you know, earlier this spring, a public involvement plan that was citizen-based. I must say that's unique. Not all municipal strategic plans are done as a public process. In fact, a lot of your communities that surround Fountain Hills take that initiative as a council initiative. Council brings in a consulting firm and conducts over a series of time a process by which they develop their strategic plan. SPAC feels strongly that the initial strategic plan set a precedent as a public process, and with the support of council for having this be a public process, we have proceeded as such, and henceforth the update process is in fact a publicly driven process. Monitored and maintained by and stewarded by a volunteer base of SPAC. I want to stress at this moment that this was an effort that is completely volunteer. When we came to you with the public involvement plan, we recognized the current strain of the financial situation, and with the planning horizon of 2010, SPAC understood that while an update needed to occur, one that was effective and efficient, especially in terms of fiscal outlays, was critical, and henceforth provided you a document that outlined a completely volunteer basis. And while I don't think any of us understood exactly how many volunteer hours were going to be involved, we can say with confidence that SPAC is dedicated to seeing this process through and ensuring that the town's resources are used efficiently and effectively. Having said that, we're already underway, as you know. We started this summer, and we hope to deliver to you a strategic plan by and for the people of Fountain Hills by early next spring. The timeline is short. It's shorter than a normal strategic planning process would be. The desire by council when we came to you was that you would be able to use information that we garnered in your budget development, and we hope to be able to provide you, while not a final product, certainly a lot of insight to staff and to you, council, in order to develop your next budget next year. So while the original strategic plan we feel is very sound and serves as a great foundation, its bones serve as a great foundation, SPAC is moving forward and is looking to the public to help put the meat on the bones now and to make sure that it's a relevant and up-to-date document. We've devised a 4-phase project, as you know, and the first phase is the strategic plan audit. That's why I'm here this evening. At each of these 4 milestones, SPAC will be in front of you to present that document or product ultimately next year with a final strategic plan that we hope that you will consider for adoption. Our next phase this fall is going to be education, and what we're going to be doing is taking some of the nuggets of information we heard from residents this summer and investigating those a little further, specifically to devise what our values are and reaffirm them in a lot of cases, devise a vision for Fountain Hills' future, and ultimately get to some of those focus areas that will be the core element of the strategic plan update. Over the winter, SPAC will be hard at our computers. We'll be writing a draft document, and over the course of next spring, using the public to affirm that document and ultimately provide you a document, hopefully by the end of March, that is adoptable. So as I mentioned, we're in phase 1, or at the end of phase 1, I should say. And there was really, the purpose of phase 1 was twofold. We started with an evaluation of the current strategic plan. What is the status of those strategic initiatives that were outlined in 2005? We evaluated its usefulness as a tool revisited the plan vision and values, and specifically revisited the priorities outlined, or at least started that process. Then we took it a step further and started identifying some of the gaps in terms of the strategic activities that were outlined, its usefulness as a tool, and ultimately its relevance in terms of its values previously outlined, and ultimately priorities. What have we done so far? We started this process out with some interviews, as you all know. We interviewed SPAC commissioners, interviewed council, and we also committed our efforts to a feedback session. It's basically a questionnaire, a fancy word for a questionnaire, that we provided in paper form at the town kiosks and distributed to community organizations and folks, but also provided as an online version so that folks can provide feedback. Specifically, that was to identify values and get to core fundamental vision elements of Fountain Hills residents. We had many meetings and presentations with area organizations. We conducted resident interviews, so digging a little deeper and having a more rich dialogue with residents. SPAC commissioners talked and spent many hours talking to residents of Fountain Hills, young and old, to understand and get a richer understanding, I should say, of really what makes Fountain Hills such a special place. We had 2 planning team meetings. The planning team is a group of residents that we have asked to help provide feedback on our milestone effort, make sure that SPAC isn't getting tunnel vision, provide guidance to the effort. Their first role really was to review the document that's in front of you and provide feedback, making sure that we interpreted the results correctly. And it's a group of citizens, young and old. We have a couple high schoolers, a few retirees, folks who were part of the original strategic plan process, and even a retired SPAC member, and also people who are very new to the strategic plan process. And so we have a really wide dynamic of folks who are willing to share a couple hours every month or so with us to provide their feedback as we move through this process. We also had interviews with executive staff here at the town of Fountain Hills, and of course, our favorite activity, having our SPAC meetings. This brings us, of course, to the document that's included in your agenda packet this evening, which is working paper number 1, our strategic gap analysis. It's organized in 3 major sections. There's a background of the strategic plan, as well as the process. You have the strategic plan audit, which outlines ultimately where we are in implementing the current strategic plan. Insights into community values, so we start to investigate what our community values are, reaffirm some of those that are clear, and maybe question maybe some additional values that we didn't identify last round, and also challenges and changes moving forward. We also then start to take that question of what are the gaps of the current strategic plan that we want to ultimately fill moving forward in the strategic plan update. That first section, implementation status, we took that consumer reports mentality through a series of a couple of graphics and took all the strategic actions that were outlined in the original strategic plan, and together, in fact, working with staff heavily, identified what the implementation of all of those strategic actions were. In the end, as the town manager already pointed out, there's been great strides at implementing your strategic plan. You should be proud of the work you've done over the course of the last 5 years. There are only a few gaps as far as implementation is concerned. The long-term revenue shortfall is still unresolved. There was a strategic action to amend the ordinance, wash ordinance, to allow for trails, and that has not been complete. While there's been a lot of bike lanes added in the town of Fountain Hills, those specifically connecting trails and pathways have not been necessarily implemented, but we want to maybe investigate that further to see if it was a desire to implement bike lanes, or was it specifically to connect trails and pathways. Expansion of community events. While events like Movie in the Park has been really successful, if you have the chance to read through the comments, you'll see several folks miss a 4th of July fireworks event, for example, and trying to identify what kinds of events we want to target in the future. Online and continuing education. This is a little bit of an interesting one. While the town of Fountain Hills hasn't specifically implemented this initiative, the global demand in capitalism has. As you know, over the course of the last 5 years, access to continuing education and advanced educational opportunities via computer coursework abounds, and certainly University of Phoenix here in town or in the Valley is a testament to that. And so while the town and specifically the community may not have necessarily fulfilled that objective, it's clear that the market has. And so we need to evaluate, has that changed or has the meaning of it changed? Establishing view corridors, while staff has committed a lot of energies to researching this, we have not necessarily specifically established those. And in addition to that, as budget cuts from this past year indicate, wash maintenance. Another part of this section was usefulness as a tool. And we interviewed you to get an understanding of how you use the strategic plan, because ultimately you and staff are the ones who will be using this on a daily basis. When we asked you, how do you use it? By and large, everyone's response was, of course we use it at our annual goal setting session. And resoundingly, that was used ultimately as how we use the strategic plan. And then from there, sometimes staff said, oh, I use it on a daily basis whenever I'm preparing an agenda item. And others said, besides that, that's about it. You all recognize the importance of a strategic plan to serve as a foundation for long-term planning. But, you know, there are a lot of opportunities, I think, moving forward to create a document that is really an important and useful and concise document for both staff to use and for you to use. And some of those opportunities that we identified through our work was simplify, streamline, and refine. I mean, by and large, you told us you want a user-friendly document. A lot of you associate the current strategic plan as this document, right, this 3-ring binder. Others of you say, oh, well, this is really the strategic plan, which is basically the 8-page pamphlet, user-friendly. It's certainly the one I use most of the time. And so what we want to be able to do is develop a tool for you to use and also for staff to use, and maybe a range of tools that will also help in providing reporting techniques and providing status updates on implementation. We want to institutionalize the plan process. We heard that there are varying degrees of usefulness or how it's used or why it's used or what the purpose of SPAC is. So we're going to take this opportunity to institutionalize the strategic plan process as part of your day-to-day activities and ultimately the role of SPAC as well. We're going to refrain from specific task lists or price tags. A strategic plan is a visionary document. It's a policy document. You are the folks that implement that policy, and so it's important to understand the role of a strategic plan in day-to-day decisions. And ultimately, another comment that we heard a couple times was maybe we need to organize the document by division of town. And so we know who that's the town manager's office who's going to be taking care of this initiative or Parks and Recreation. So these are a lot of good ideas that will help us as we move forward in determining what that document ends up looking like. The vast majority of the document you have in front of you is an appendix, really, with pages upon pages upon pages of the unedited, as you know, comments submitted by residents to a bunch of questions we asked them about values and what they value about Fountain Hills and what they want to see changed. What we heard when we looked at all these results was the fundamental reason why people are here is because of our beauty. And that could range from being nestled in the mountains to the access to the desert or the feeling of being in a mountain desert climate. Our views routinely come up in Four Peaks, and our terrain. We're unique in that aspect, certainly of a community in the valley. Equally as cited were comments like sense of community, small town feel, and quality of life. And we joke and SPAC a lot over the course of the last couple meetings. They were said often. You can go through and you can pick literally those words in order out of the results over and over again. But very few people provide us a definition of what that means. And anyone who really loves the community they're from will almost always use those exact same definitions to define why they love their community. And so really moving forward, we're going to have to find a way to define that. What is it that specifically makes Fountain Hills have a strong sense of community? What are those things so we can protect them? You know, other values that we saw routinely cited, location to the valley, folks like being away but really close to amenities, friendly population, Fountain Park and other amenities, including public art, community centers, so some of those folks using our amenities really love those things. Our safety and security, and then ultimately the quality design and diversity of housing options provided here in Fountain Hills. What did people tell us they didn't like? The incomplete and disjointed commercial retail development and the lack of downtown. You see those topics come over and over if you read through the appendix. In survey analysis, we call that recency effect. The fact that under the Chamber's leadership in partnership with the town and BVAC, the Downtown Swaback Initiative certainly has downtown development on the front minds of a lot of folks, and you see that coming up routinely, specifically citing that initiative. And certainly people are eager to fill that void and fill it with a quality development, not just any development. A lack of quality restaurant, retail, and entertainment options. People said, oh, there aren't quality restaurants, there aren't quality Italian restaurants, there's nothing to do, there's not enough good shopping, et cetera, et cetera. The lack of affordability for families and young professionals, and when we committed our reconnaissance effort earlier in the year, we heard this from our students, from our youth in town, that their teachers can't live in Fountain Hills. It's unaffordable, and there's a desire to ensure that this community is sustainable long term, and that's, of course, also including the population it serves and attracts. The lack of lifespan activities and amenities, and the fact that there's just not enough to do. If there's another comment you saw routinely as you're paging through all that appendix, was not enough to do, not enough to do, not enough to do. Well, what is it that we need to do to fill that void? And so we'll be asking that question here in a minute. There's a perception that there's increased traffic and crime in town, and that's certainly something folks are disappointed in. And that there was a few folks who said that there's a negativity of and by the town and or leadership. And some people said, well, you know, it's really hard to build here, for example. You know, it's hard to build in Fountain Hills. There's a reputation it's hard to build in Fountain Hills. Others said, oh, I hate small town politics. You know, so they provided you those responses. And others didn't provide a response. So we're going to have to figure out what that really means and how we can solve it maybe with the strategic plan update. Then we asked folks to tell us what are some of the changes they're seeing in Fountain Hills. Not necessarily good or bad, just changes. What would they answer if you asked, hey, how's Fountain Hills changed? And overwhelmingly you see things like growth, more people, more houses, more development. Some people said, yay, more houses, more people, more development. Others said, oh no, more people, more houses, more development. Certainly the global economic crisis has changed business as usual. Let's be honest, for all of us. The aging community and infrastructure came up. When talking to the folks who were involved in the original strategic plan, I was not even in the state of Arizona at the time, folks said that, you know, Fountain Hills was still considered a new town then. You know, folks still considered Fountain Hills new. But certainly as you read through the responses, folks don't see that anymore, and they're recognizing the opportunity that we need to rebuild, refocus, address aging infrastructure. And so there's a real opportunity, I think, moving forward. And then there's the divergent viewpoints, which are always fun. We have some people who say, oh, the community's always changing for the better. And then you have the folks who are saying, it's stagnant, that's the problem, nothing's changing. And so you have folks varying on that opinion as well. So what are some of our challenges? Overwhelmingly, the financial health of our community and town was cited over and over and over again as a challenge moving forward. Economic development, downtown viability, job creation was also cited. Others, including schools, families, and our youth, whether it was ensuring the continued health and soundness of our school system, or the health and welfare of our families by providing them amenities that make sense. Crime, traffic, and public safety was cited as a challenge moving forward. Some people have interpreted or perceived there's a change, more crime, more traffic in the community. Like I said, infrastructure and redevelopment really is an opportunity moving forward for the town of Fountain Hills, as well as identifying what kinds of amenities and events that the town is going to provide moving forward. So after looking at all of that feedback, we took a look at those original values that were stated in the original strategic plan. Now, these 7 items, which are listed here with a hash mark in front of them, are literally as they appear in the current strategic plan. They are words, and there's no definition or explanation as to what they mean, which is certainly something we're going to improve on moving forward. But when we take the analysis as a whole, we see that there is strong continued support for a couple things. Certainly the small town feel, because we heard that. Literally, people said small town feel. We like our small town character. Community participation, involvement, and volunteerism, people value that as part of their community and want to continue that sense of civic responsibility in the town of Fountain Hills. The environment is something they value, though I will asterisk this by saying we're not really sure how one would define environment in this case, and you'll see a slide forthcoming that may take an opportunity to evaluate that. And public safety, certainly. People value the public safety and sense of security they have here in Fountain Hills. The other 3 values that were cited in the original strategic plan that we may need to evaluate, dig a little deeper on, cultural diversity. The only time that cultural diversity was usually cited within folks' responses during this first phase of the strategic plan update was, it isn't culturally diverse. Fountain Hills is not culturally diverse. But more importantly, we need to define what cultural diversity means. What does the word culture mean, and what does the word diversity mean? Are we talking about amenities, opportunities, such as arts and theater and movies? Are we talking about the people of Fountain Hills aren't diverse enough? People seek a more diverse population. This one's one of those that we really have to figure out what it means as we move forward so that we can adequately build a strategic plan that identifies the values of Fountain Hills. And this one's is a thinker, I think. Recreational opportunities. While folks really cited the access to trails or the outdoors, in that question of not enough to do, we need to figure out if recreational opportunities is defined in the traditional Parks and Rec sense as far as park and programs, or is it more than that? Is it to fill that void of not enough to do, and is recreation considered a little bit more of a global term? And also education. In the development of the first strategic plan, Fountain Hills Independent School District, or Unified School District, was growing fast. And recently, it's contracting, and that's a reality that Fountain Hills is facing. And so education we need to define a little bit better, because I think maybe the meaning has changed since the development of the first strategic plan. So we need to spend a little bit more time on that. So after evaluating the original values, SPAC said, well, maybe are there others that would fill the void or better address the values that residents are telling us they have? Economic vitality in general. Is there a need for quality commercial, retail, and employment opportunities to become a sustainable full-service community? Is that a value of Fountain Hills? Health and welfare. Do we value more than our personal safety? Is it more than just, I feel safe? Is it more like, I value my health and my wellness, and being in Fountain Hills ensures that? And then finally, environmental sustainability. Let's try this nomenclature out. Does environmental sustainability capture the value that Fountain Hills residents have? Meaning, is it more than just the term environment, and does it include resource management and practices? So we need to kind of fiddle around with that opportunity. So in conclusion, or wrapping up, I suppose, there are some gaps, certainly, in the strategic plan, or maybe opportunities moving forward. There are some unimplemented strategic items, and it's SPAC's purpose moving forward to define what are the original strategic plan moves forward, and what are some of the new things that we need to add. Retooling the plan format. There's a big opportunity moving forward to make sure it's a document that's user-friendly, and ways to improve the strategic plan effort through this tool. Refining our values and building a real vision for the town of Fountain Hills is critical. You told us that you wanted this to be a vision-based document. The original strategic plan places those value words at the end of the strategic plan. I think I can speak with confidence that SPAC's going to ensure that the vision and values come first in your strategic plan. It's the first thing you'll see when you crack open whatever that document looks like. And so we need to make sure it's value and vision-based. And ultimately, we need to start identifying some of our priorities moving forward. Where does this lead us? It leads us into phase 2 of our project. And this phase is really going to be education and vision building, okay? So we're going to take the opportunity here, take what we heard, I should say, and refine it, provide some educational opportunities for residents, and then get feedback on some of the future tasks and strategies we want to move forward. One of the ways we're going to be doing that is through issue forums, and you'll see there's 5 topics listed there from the feedback we received that's represented in the report in front of you. SPAC has identified 5 opportunities to have public information or issue forums, and these are the topics we've kind of been noodling around. Sense of community, we really need to define what that means. We have to find out what that means because those are important values. People would leave Fountain Hills if they didn't have a good sense of community. They would. They told us that already. Answering the not enough to do question. So how do we fill that? And I think we're going to find some fun opportunities to do issue forums, maybe in a non-traditional public meeting sense, to get answers to some of these questions. Environmental sustainability. Let's talk about implementing environmental sustainability practices in the town of Fountain Hills, what that means not only for the town, but more importantly for the community as a whole. Financing our future. That was the #1 challenge moving forward that residents told us, so let's figure that out. And then downtown vitality. One of the things that you also told us as we started this process is work in tandem with the SWABAC project that the Chamber is sponsoring and you are in partnership with BVAC. Maybe this is an opportunity, especially based on SWABAC's position and their process as they're starting their implementation strategies. Let's meet in the middle and find out how SWABAC can deliver that product and what ways the SPAC can pick up the implementation strategies and tools outlined in the SWABAC plan and put them into the strategic plan update. Finally, of course, we'll continue our other outreach efforts, which include SPAC meetings, but more importantly, meetings with organizations. This is an organic process, and so we invite all members of the public to call us up. We'd love to come out and speak to your organizations throughout the rest of this process. We'll have more of those feedback sessions or questionnaires and other presentations along the way. So with that long presentation, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions or take your comments.
Thank you, Audra. Questions? Councilmember Contino.
Yes. I just want to thank you for your report. It's probably one of the most comprehensive reports we've had in a long time, and I thank you for putting in all your time and your effort and of your staff, and I think you did a great job.
Thank you very much. I wish I had staff.
Well, you know, the ones...
I will thank my volunteer commissioners who sit behind me for acting as great staff. I thank you for your support, Councilman.
Very good. I'm sure we all echo that one. So, yeah, thank you again. Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Audra, I really appreciate the in-depth measures you're taking because we get these comments, but it's like, well, what do they mean? And certainly, I mean, you know, we look at the comments about the town and it's like, oh, all right, you know, what are those things and how can we make them better? So I really appreciate that level of thank you.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Shambo.
Thank you, Mayor. Audra, you touched a little bit on how you plan on reaching those people that didn't get a chance to participate in the strategic plan the first time around. Can you expand on that a little bit? Have you come up with any really enlightening ideas that might get some of those people out of their homes to come to some of those meetings? Or
we're trying, and one of the ways that we initially recognized when we did our reconnaissance effort, because that's the question we asked, how can we get you involved, was to do less of those meetings, less of the public sessions, less of the public hearings format. People just don't have the time to commit, so we're trying to find unique ways to get to people where they're already at. As you'll remember, the public involvement plan really echoed that as a philosophy. Let's move and go to people where they're already at as opposed to inviting them to come to us, okay? So in a couple ways we've done that is we have a long list of organizations that we've been meeting with already, existing organizations in town, anything from the Chamber to the Men's Discussion Group. Boys and Girls Club has been instrumental actually in this process. And interesting, we're trying to work with the Boys and Girls Club and the Fountain Hills High School to mirror those 5 issues forums, also in the youth setting, okay? So we're not going to expect the 16-year-olds to come out with the parents for an issue forum sponsored by the town of Fountain Hills. Instead, we're going to go to them, and we're going to try to find an opportunity to engage the youth. It's quite important, especially when we're thinking future sense. Another way we've done a little bit better outreach, I think, is providing an electronic opportunity for folks to communicate with us. We found that during the summer, folks may be not here, and being able to virtually participate in this process is really important. And so the first feedback session, as I said, we got great response. I'm actually surprised by the number of folks who decided to take 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes either day to provide their feedback in the feedback session, and a lot of those came online. Clearly that was an efficient way to garner information from folks, and so we're going to continue using that tool. But others said, I like the discussion. We got some feedback that I like being able to hear other people's opinions because, wow, that provides me some insight, and I'm allowed to contribute more effectively. And so we're going to continue that effort to get out and go to organizations and folks where they're at. And now that we're going into the fall, kids are coming back to school. Katie is dreading that moment next week. And folks are going to come back this fall from maybe their summer destinations up north. We're going to continue that philosophy to ensure that we're going to people, not putting them out, but also offering the opportunity for folks to come out and talk to us as well.
Maybe you can use Katie as a stepping stone to get in front of the high school students.
Yes, in fact, that is her Phase 2 major task, in fact. So she's already working on that as we move into the school year.
Thank you, Audra.
Yeah.
Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. One of the things that I noticed that you said there were no price tags, and I'm glad about that because I think during the first session, after a while, you started to look at the ones that were going to cost a lot, and I think, and maybe it's just because it's in your nature to say, well, look, we could pick those 3 and they have like 0 or nothing, and so I'm not sure that everything that came out was totally like wish list or totally, and other people will obviously have to figure out if something is just impossible to have, and I mean I appreciate the comments about the downtown, which may show a little bit of a disconnect that how do you control that kind of thing if you're not the owner, but I'm glad that a little animal here. I'm glad that we don't narrow it like that because I'd rather know what people would really like to see without thinking, but that's $24 a month because remember how we did that the first time, and I think it was valuable, but I'm glad that we're not doing it this time, and I appreciate that.
Councilmember Leger.
Mayor, if I may, Audra and members of the SPAC, I had an opportunity to review not only your document, but all of your document, including all of your statements. And my takeaway from looking through all of it, first off, was, what an incredible job. Professionally done, just incredible. I mean, if we were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for this, I don't think it would look this good, this professional, this thorough. And I know that a lot of you do this professionally as a business. I really respect and will be relying on your expertise going forward. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to ask questions about the process, your methodology, so forth and so on. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that this evening. I do have a lot of questions, and hopefully I could get together, perhaps Audra, with you offline and talk more about some of the methodology, which is kind of a drill down. But I do have a couple observations, and just real quickly, a slide that you didn't present tonight was, and I'm not sure if you have it up there, it's on our packet, was the breakdown of the age group. You had that pie chart, and you had that breakdown of the age group. And I'm not going to ask you specific questions about that, but I'm just a general question, which is, were you all happy with the breakdown and the percentage of the age group you were able to capture? And I'm asking that question because when we started down this road, that was one of our challenges from the past. So I'm just wondering how the group feels about the reality today, and do you feel, not do I feel, do you feel there's a need to expand those percentages, and if so, how would you go about doing that?
Well, I think I can speak for SPAC that all feedback is good feedback. So let me preface that. We certainly want to hear from everybody, but especially those who have something to say. You know, we want to invite, we might want to make this process an inviting process. As to specifically the demographics of who we heard from, I think you'll see that it doesn't necessarily match with the exact demographic that exists in Fountain Hills. We can acknowledge that. One of the ways we are already addressing that is one in instrumentality, specifically methodology. When you look at the actual breakdowns or offerings of how we qualify those age groups, you'll see that there's a group, one of the ages is from 36 to 50. And then the next age group from that is 51 to 65. And the group of 51 to 65, I heard from several of those folks who were really upset that they had to check the box 51 to 65. Folks who had just turned over 50 felt like that was an unfair qualification of their age. I have a feeling, while I don't know for sure, because we didn't ask for specific age, we provided those qualifying sections or groups, that a large percentage of that 51 to 65 was closer to the 51 than the 65, and if we would have done a different breakout mirroring maybe the census breakout, we would have a little bit more representative look. I can't say that for sure. But it's certainly my suspicion. Additionally,
once again, I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to understand if y'all are satisfied with how things are going initially, or do you have to look at changing to expand? Because that was the gap.
Absolutely.
That was one of the biggest criticisms of the original plan.
Absolutely.
Is that there was this group wasn't represented, this group wasn't represented, so forth and so on. So it's just food for thought. A second slide that you didn't present this evening, but you made reference to it, which I thought was just a fascinating slide, was the slide you put up there on divergent viewpoints. I mean, if council has an opportunity to look at it, and the public look at it, it really goes to the challenge of doing a strategic plan. It's like night and day. It's like Allen, it's like Red Sox and Yankees. You know, it's so that is the challenge, and that was the challenge of the first deal, and that's why it's so important to have these representative groups. And so in addressing that challenge, how do you address that challenge? For example, when I look at the dislikes, or if I look at the likes, my tendency is to go to the data, the raw data, and say, well, if you have divergent goals, you have to kind of look at critical mass. And one, for instance, is the affordability. Although it rose to the occasion of your chart, when I drilled down on your data, out of 115 responses on dislikes, there was only one about affordability. So I wonder, how do you get to the divergent argument, or what is your viewpoint on that?
Thank you, Councilman. First, I would like to say that divergent, when Councilmember Leger is referring to slides, he's actually referring to over the 65-page report, and so this presentation highlights some of that content of the larger report, and it includes demographics and an interesting page, if you will, of the report that talks to divergent viewpoints, which shows the exact spectrum of some of the topics and feedback we're receiving. I'll first handle the question about how do we meet in the middle. I will caution anyone to think that at any point in time the strategic planning process will provide uniform 100% consensus on any point. Any of you who have a spouse or a child can know, and know often, that the perception and way of getting from here to there can be up to considerable interpretation. And so I'll caution you to hope for a strategic planning process that will ensure that everyone in the town of Fountain Hills agrees with every moment of this project. One of the ways we're going to try to provide a consensus-based document is to remove some of the nuanced detail that exists in the current plan and really get to vision-based strategies and goals. And so you'll see, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I think what you'll end up seeing is a document that talks a little bit more philosophically about how the town wants council to do business. What will end up happening is staff's going to provide you initiatives ultimately to reach those goals or objectives, and you're going to make those decisions. But we're going to remove some of the nuanced detail that makes it a checkmark list, okay? And we're going to feel confident that moving forward there's consensus related to the philosophy of how Fountain Hills does business. So I'd answer your question in part that way.
Thank you very much. You guys did a great job, and I look forward to chatting with you offline and drilling down a little more. Thank
Great.
you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, a lot of data. Thanks again. A couple questions I had. One, you addressed it at an update in the spring about business and how you're going to take feedback from business and include our local businesses. But that's wasn't addressed too much of this presentation tonight. Can you speak to that? Because that was a gap that I think was identified previously.
Yeah, and in fact, in our reconnaissance effort, we talked to our small business folks and, in fact, Frank and Chamber about how we can better include our business community. And we've done that in a couple ways already, meeting with the Chamber, and I think the downtown, being able to partner at this point as the Chamber and town deliver a vision product for downtown, maybe finding the opportunity to pick that up. We also have several small business owners or community business owners that sit on that planning team, that group of residents who are providing us feedback throughout the process or providing SPAC feedback throughout the process. We're also using the Chamber specifically as a way to get information out. And so several of you who are members of the Chamber might have received the notification about when the feedback session was available. And we found a lot of success of using the Chamber's contact database and able to spread the word about the strategic plan update. In addition, the Fountain Hills Leadership Group that the Chamber sponsors was one of the first folks we met with, or groups of people we met with. Charlotte and I are both graduates, if you will, of that program, and it was great to be able to loop back with that budding leadership group and be able to pick their brains about what we do when we move forward. And you'll see us continually visiting those organizations as well. So I think we've been specifically sensitive to that issue, and I think what you'll see, especially in the feedback you already saw, there is a desire to have a strategic plan that talks to business vitality, and you'll see that was a value, I think, that SPAC sees emerging or percolating up, and I think you'll see that represented as we move forward.
All right, thanks. And cost, can you explain why that's not going to be a factor or addressed as far as the cost of each item that might be identified or weighted?
Referring to the document identifying the cost to implement strategies, one of why we're not going to include that is because it's hard to put a price tag on a philosophy. It's hard to put a price tag on implementation of a philosophy. We hope that this document will be the overriding philosophy the town implements, and on a yearly basis, as you identify your goals, and then staff provides an action plan for you, that's where you'll get to see some of the costs of implementing and making decisions for implementing the strategic plan. One of the things we hope for is that this document will be more of a living document, that it ultimately will represent the foundation of what Fountain Hills values moving forward, and that while it will be tweaked on an annual basis, at the end of the day, it never goes out of date. Okay, it'll always continually fulfill the vision of Fountain Hills. And so when we remove projects, specific kinds of projects from the strategic plan and put them into a staff role and maybe an annual action plan document that staff is able to provide to you as you consider your annual goal session at the beginning of the year, perhaps it's a better way of moving forward and ultimately providing you a better budget tool.
All right, good. Another thing I wanted to, because there are quite a few people that watch Channel 11, is just to ask the public to be responsive whenever they see an opportunity to share their opinion or fill out a survey or serve and help out the SPAC in working hard to relook at our strategic plan. So just want to encourage the public to do that. And I think it's a testament to the love and care people in our town of Fountain Hills that just love and care for their community so much to have the volunteers on our SPAC and others that are assisting that are just tremendously skilled, obviously, as well. So we're very fortunate and thankful. So I have no more questions. Anyone else? All right. Yes. Councilmember Hanson, all right. That's a lot of work. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Item number 10, consideration of resolution 2009-29, approving an intergovernmental agreement with Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation relating to the 2008-2009 Proposition 202 fundings in the amount of $183,998 and authorizing the expenditures to 1, the River of Time Museum for $5,000, 2, the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce Visitors Bureau for $70,000, and 3, the Fountain Hills Unified School District number 98 for $108,998. Rick, do we have a presentation here?
No presentation beyond an explanation and a reminder again to the council and you, Mayor, that we serve and have served historically in a conduit type of role through which these funds flow. It's required that we approve an IGA in order to allow us to fulfill that role. And so I leave that to your consideration tonight.
Thank you. So these are just simply flowing through our community as was set up through the legislature and the 202 fund.
Through our organization and into our community, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for staff? I don't have the actual motion up here. Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Probably a question for Rick. Has the town ever applied for any 202 funds for any projects?
We have. Yes, we have.
I mean, it looks like a good opportunity maybe going forward for transportation-related things that we...
Absolutely. I think we give consideration to a variety of projects when opportunities, or when the opportunity to apply for these monies come around, and I think we're generally part of that consideration process, and sometimes that we've been the recipient of that, and other times other entities and organizations have been recipients.
Thank you.
Yes, no more questions. Look for a motion. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2009-27 and authorize the expenditures upon receipt of the funds from Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation.
All right, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on this item? Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. I wanted to mention something about, this is an article, but it explains some stuff that's been going on down at the legislature. This is from the AP in August 4th. That there's an effort to allow these racinos, which are allowing lobbyists there for horse and dog racing industry, are asking lawmakers to let their clients have casino-style gaming in the horse racing and the dog racing, and that the tracks would give the state more money than it gets from the tribes. The most recent figures from Department of Gaming is that the annual contributions to the state, and right now from what we're doing, is about $110 million. Half of that goes to education, and part of that goes to emergency medical services. And on top of that $110 million, the tribes give about a little over $15 million to cities, towns, and counties. That those dollars will go away if lawmakers allow the tracks to have casino gaming, because Prop 202 in 2002 did the ballot measure itself absolved the tribes from the need to share revenue if off-reservation gambling is ever allowed to increase. And Kathy, what you were asking, I looked on that little sheet that we got, I think it might have been in January, and I might be wrong, and Mary or somebody would have to tell me, but I thought it looked like about $750,000 since this started in about 2004 has come, not to the town per se, but to our neighbors and our the community. That does not count this $180,000. So I wanted to point that part out so that the game, and from what I understand in general, tribal officials are spending time at the legislature trying to fend off this effort. So I would urge us to keep an eye on this and to see how our neighbors are feeling about that. I don't know specifically how Fort McDowell, if they've taken a position or anything like that, only in general how the tribes have felt about this. So I wanted to bring that up in light of this agenda item.
All right, thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions?
Public input? We have public input.
Anyone from the public?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you. All right, move on to item 11. Open a public hearing and receive comments on a proposed special use permit to allow Altel Wireless Communications to install a 65-foot tall cellular monopalm tower at 17332 Rand Drive. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an application by Altel Communication for a special use permit to construct 65-foot tall monopalm style communications tower at 17332 East Rand Drive near the town's eastern boundary. The proposed requires a special use permit for two reasons. It exceeds the allowed zoning district height limit of 40 feet, and it does not meet the 100% or 65-foot distance fall down setback required by the zoning ordinance. Property is currently owned by the Fountain Hills Unified School District and is being used as a bus parking and maintenance facility. Quick overview is this is the property here, these two lots. This is the proposed tower location. This is Saguaro Boulevard, Rand Drive. This is the alley. This is the town line. The Yavapai community is on this side. This slide shows the proposed location of the tower and some relative distances. This is the location of the tower. The green circle is the fall down distance, 65 feet from the tower. The distance to the property line is 14 feet, and the distance to the town line is 90 feet. The blue line shows you the current power lines. This is the proposed, or this is the preferred location that the staff had recommended. If the tower were to fall, it would fall within that green circle. It would either fall on the building, within the parking lot, in Rand Drive here, or across the alley here. The yellow shaded area is where the ground mounted equipment would be going behind a wall or a chain link fence. Palm tree elevations, obviously they look like a palm tree. They'll be 65 feet tall to the tallest point from the ground. And these are enhanced photos that were supplied by Altel showing how the tree could potentially look once it's installed. These views are as if you are on Saguaro Boulevard looking at it. This is before, this is after. This is a little bit closer, slightly different angle, again before and after. Staff forwarded a recommendation to deny the special use permit due to the tower's location and height not meeting the setback requirements. The Planning Commission disagreed, and they forwarded a recommendation to approve the special use permit subject to the three conditions in your staff report. And the Commission's reasoning was that they felt that the location does not the Commission felt that the location, although it did not meet the specific ordinance requirements, the stealth design was appropriate, and it did not pose significant hazard to others. So I kind of apologize for giving you this. I think this is the first time I've ever brought one before you where the staff and the Commission disagreed on the recommendation. That concludes my presentation.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? Any from the public first, Bev? Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, we have two cards. We have the applicant, Michael Campbell, followed by Richard Kloster.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Campbell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Mike Campbell. I'm a consultant for Altel Communications. I want to thank you this evening for a chance to present here tonight. I want to thank Mr. Rogers for his efforts on this. The case was brought forward, and we knew from day one that we would require to have a conditional use permit because we didn't meet the setbacks and also because of the height limitations. In the ordinance, we're allowed to do that, and that's why we're here. We had a very good meeting at Planning Commission to discuss the issues. the fall-down issues were the main concern. Sabre Towers, I believe was the company, issued a letter in the file stating the fall-down radius and the bendability of this structure. I've been in business 15 years, and I've seen one go down. That was actually man-assisted, so it was not a act of nature. As I said, the monopalm is going to be in the eastern portion of the town on the district facility property location. They wanted us over in the corner, out of the way of their normal operations of the facility. We're over there. There's no interruption. They don't have to worry about somebody maybe hitting it with a bus or anything to that effect. The site is designed to improve the wireless network along the eastern side of Fountain Hills. The terrain is quite difficult for the cellular companies. This one actually fits a nice triangle completion for Alltel, now to be Verizon Wireless. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Were there other areas considered for this pole in that area?
The original location was the Saguaro Car Wash, which is about a block and a half south, and then also the community theater property.
Is there a reason why the poles that are already existing, standing very high?
The power poles?
At the, well, those as well, but at Desert Vista Park, where
the engineers at the time, yes, I did look at the park, but that was outside of the targeted area for the engineer. The engineer wanted to be further south. I think the next, you go below the car wash, and there's 2 more buildings, and then it becomes residential. So obviously we couldn't be down there with the housing. This was as far north as he would stretch it.
Okay.
The power poles along the boundary, my client did not have an agreement to place their antennas on those poles at the time. So,
apart from the safety issues that I'm sure we'll talk more about, is there really a need to build another tall structure such as this, be it a palm tree or a pole, when relatively nearby there are already those assets in essence in place relatively recently at the Desert Vista Park, and that I know one cellular company is already utilizing. But if it's, you know, an engineering issue and that takes you out of where you need to be, then I understand that. But it just in Fountain Hills, obviously we value our views.
Yes, sir.
And such, and so that's just an obvious question I think that would come up. Any questions? Thank you. We'll have another person from the public.
Richard Kloster.
We'll probably ask you more questions as the applicant as we go. Mr. Kloster.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Dick Kloster, or Richard if you want to be formal. I'm the president of the Eagle Mountain Homeowner Association, as most of you know. It's a pleasure to be here again, in spite of this hot weather. I just wanted to offer a couple of comments about the cellular towers as the term is being used. You're fully aware of the Verizon, I think it's Verizon, cellular towers at Eagle Mountain Parkway and Shea Boulevard, which the town receives revenue from. They're 2 huge saguaro cactus, and people do not even recognize that they're synthetic, if you will. And I think they blend with the terrain and the community, the desert life, certainly. The golf course, Eagle Mountain Golf, has been talking to Alltel to do something like that for them. And the inn at Eagle Mountain already has T-Mobile. They have a saguaro with 2 or 3 arms and some rust spots and the rest of it, so it looks very authentic. They vary in color, but I'm wondering if the town may have missed an opportunity to invite cellular companies to come survey the town property, the properties, the boundaries, if you will, to locate ideal locations that would boost their signal power for a lot of the cell phone users. I should have been up here suggesting this maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I moved here from Paradise Valley, but anyway, it still stands. It might be a possibility. As you mentioned, Mayor, rather than in in areas like parks or things of that sort, or next to schools, et cetera, would be nice to locate them so that it's not in that kind of an area. And certainly the town manager can identify areas where the town can have the property. It may be property of Fire Rock or some other golf course, but the town can find a way to gain access to that property. It just seems to me that's something that probably Mr. Davis will pursue, and even in the long-range plan, a cohesive effort to do that. I'm also curious in terms of the revenue that's being proposed by the cellular companies, because it may be something the town wants to negotiate. I think the town would probably be in a better position to negotiate some rates than some of the individual property owners, such as golf courses or inns or whatever you want to term the commercial establishment. Certainly the homeowners association has given consideration to that, and the only time we would be if the communications company, the cellular company, identified a site that we thought was common area and that would not be objectionable in any way, shape to any homeowner. Now that's a tall measure, but there are some possibilities. But I think the same is true for the town, because along public streets and right-of-ways, et cetera, the town can access that property. So anyway, I was curious in terms of the latest proposal that the engineer talked about, the consultant talked about, what the fee is from Alltel. That may not be a public figure you want to release, but at some time the transparency in terms of funds for the town is probably going to be made aware or available to the citizens.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's not going to take care of any deficit, but anyway, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Okay.
Mr. Davis, can you speak to how, or maybe Richard can speak to, a dialogue between staff and cellular or wireless providers?
Well, I know there are several locations throughout the town where we host cellular towers. I think Julie told me at one point what the revenue figure was off of that, their contribution to the general fund. It's considerable.
I mean more around the planning. As Mr. Kloster had mentioned, there's when they come in, I'm sure we've got, I think I've seen a map where we've got potential locations available. Is there dialogue to that effect?
Yeah, I think within the last couple of weeks I've spoken to 6 different cell companies. The only time that they come before you is when they need these special use permits, usually, or when they need to have a contract signed if they're on town property. We have quite a number of cell towers on town property, on light poles, or in the parks. And yes, we have those dialogues pretty regularly.
And I know those contracts are always public, and I think we've had an item on our consent agenda that's public in our packet, so you'll be able to see the revenue coming in there transparently on the packet itself. This one in particular is on the school property.
So it's the school is the beneficiary of that.
I have to ask them about this one. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments during the public hearing? Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, I have a question. The stipulations that the Planning and Zoning Commission put together, do any of those address the falling down part of it? Do you have the one about masonry wall, another about additional palm trees, and another about plans? I'm not sure. I can't tell.
Addressing the fall down part of it being the fall down distance itself?
Is denying it. Is any of that recognized by what the Planning and Zoning put into those stipulations?
Those 3 stipulations were actually recommended by staff if they wanted to approve it. They don't really address the fall down off-site, no.
Commission? All right, I'm confused. It says the Planning and Zoning held a public hearing. Upon review, they voted to recommend subject to the following stipulations.
Right.
So the Planning and Zoning voted to recommend according to those 3 stipulations, but the staff is recognized?
Yes, typically we'll give them a report and we'll make our recommendation, and in this case it was a recommendation to deny, but we said, if you are going to approve it, then here are some recommended stipulations, which they added.
Do any of those stipulations address the
All done.
part about,
No.
about it? Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Leger?
Bob, during your presentation, did you mention that staff had recommended an alternative site?
Yes.
And could you put that slide back up there? And my question is, at that alternative site, is there a lesser probability of it if it did falling? Would that recommended site require a special use permit? Let me start there.
Well, it would require the special use permit because of the height,
Okay.
but not because of the setbacks. There it meets the setback requirements.
So if in your recommendation that tower was to fail, and based on the manufacturer's report, it doesn't rule out failure, and it states specifically that if it does fail due to wind, there's two possibilities. One, it was bent over, which is less of a problem for surrounding properties, and the other is total failure. It would be a 54-foot radius, which, if that pole is to fall in any direction in 54 feet, what harm would it do?
In the proposed location?
In the proposed location.
It would still hit the building, or it
Which
could land on
Which building would it hit?
the school department building that it would be next to. This is the building here.
Okay.
So
So it would hit that building, what,
the radius would be about this. So it would either land on something in the parking lot or hit the building.
so vehicles or that building? Is it, if any,
I can
you
plug that
mentioned the
in.
power lines, I guess they're outside of that radius.
They're well outside, yes.
And I'm curious to know why the alternative site was not considered if, in fact, there's less of liability, I would imagine, for the cell tower company and possibly even the town if that was to do harm or damage.
Well, they can probably speak to it, but my understanding was that the school department requested that it not be within inside their gate. Their gate is about here, and then they park the buses behind the gate.
And what would be the rationale for that, that if it was inside their gate, there's a high probability maybe a bus would plow into it or something?
I think they were more worried about their people being able to get into it to maintain it. There should be no problem with anybody running into it. That's also where the dumpster is. I have a blow up, I think. Yeah. See, this is the dumpster location here. There's no enclosure, but that's where they park their dumpster. And if that can not be hit, then I would think that they could place a tower with some bollards that wouldn't be hit either.
So it's possible that it could be moved and it would remain on the school district site, so they would still receive revenue, but it would decrease the probability of harm if it was to fall. Is that?
That was our position.
Your position. And in that location, perhaps a gentleman could answer this, or perhaps you could answer it, is that gap and that distance isn't going to really change what they're trying to accomplish from an engineering perspective in terms of coverage, I would not imagine. What's the distance between those 2 points?
I'll have to give you a real rough estimate, but it's probably about 75 feet, 80 feet. Well, maybe, this is a 65-foot radius circle, so probably maybe closer to 100 feet away.
130 feet.
And would that change the engineering design or transmission?
You'd have to ask them.
Mayor, we could have a
Yeah.
technician come up here.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Ledger, the location inside the yard, we stayed outside. That's where the district wanted us. 130 feet away would not impact the RF coverage of it.
Very good.
We were working with the district on this, and they felt that that was the best place.
That's their preferred choice?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay.
And
Very good.
the Planning Commission, in their discussions on the fall down, felt that if it did fall, it would impact the district, and that there was not substantial property damage potential to the east or to the south. You've got 95 feet to the east before it hits the reservation property line. And a good distance to the south, it still would land in the middle of Rand Drive, which is not a traffic area. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor, it may appear that I'm obsessing on details, but I have a difficult time approving something where staff clearly does not approve of it, and has recommended an alternative site that is safer. So I have one more question, and then obviously other people have questions, of the town attorney. And I know we don't like to talk about liability, so do what you can to answer my question. This falls down, who's responsible? The manufacturer, the cell company, the school district, or, I mean, who's responsible? Who pays the lawsuit?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Leger, I don't think I could even speculate as to who pays the lawsuit. As you know, whenever something like this happens, the broadest net is cast, and people will attempt to bring whomever into the litigation that they can. I don't believe the town's been named in any litigation regarding any of our cell facilities, even the ones on our property at this point. Clearly, there are at least two levels of groups in between the town and liability, one being the cell provider, the second being the owner of the property, the school district in this case, and then whomever may have caused the tower to fall down in the first place. It could be potentially three levels. So I don't know that there's a significant risk to the town, but I don't think I would ever tell you that there is no risk to the town.
Thank you. Mayor, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Other questions, comments? Councilmember Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. In looking at one of the pictures of the location where the tower would go, it appears that there's maybe a screen wall that would be between the tower and the school district's building. And I'm just wondering if that, if it did go down, if that wouldn't help break the fall, so it wouldn't be directly hitting the building. It would be hitting the screen wall first.
Which area are you talking, this area here?
Mm-hmm, yes.
This is actually part of the building.
Well,
There's a wall in one of our drawings that we have on a slide, or report. Doesn't have a number on it.
It might be towards the end of your presentation if...
Oh, there, I see it.
I guess not. I mean, and I'm just, in looking at this location, the other one would be apparently in the parking lot, which I think would look very odd, having a palm tree coming out of the middle of a parking lot. And they're talking about adding 3 other palm trees around this. I mean, it would certainly look more natural and fit into the area. I think the school district, in the letter that they gave us, clearly asking us to look favorably on this because it would be a benefit to the district, and I do respect that. Maybe there's some way that something could be included in an agreement, or Andrew, I don't know if this would be possible, but just saying, the school district accepts any responsibility or liability, and that, in us approving this, we are not accepting any of the responsibility.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hanson, I don't believe that we'll be a party to any agreement that could go in, and clearly as part of the motion and after the discussion, it could be clear that the town is making the accommodation at the school district's request, and that should be a consideration later on down the road, but I don't know if it will really matter. It's clearly the intent of the town to not put itself in the harm's way for the benefit of a property owner, even if it is a school district, but like I said, this is several levels removed from the town. This is an approval. This is much like approving a building on a piece of property. A special use permit to make it a 3-story building instead of a 2-story building. If the building falls over, I don't know that the town's really liable for that. So that's essentially what this is a very tall, skinny building.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, could you show me with your pointer where the reservation property starts? Is that the blue line I'm looking at?
That's the yellow line.
Oh, that's the yellow line. Okay, and so the power lines are beyond that, or the power lines?
The power lines run just inside it.
Just inside of it, and that tower is beyond those. Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to see. So in my mind, I'm trying to think to myself, what could possibly happen to that tower that would cause it to fall? I don't see any regular traffic coming through there. That's a dead end. I don't think that street's ever going to go through. So I don't think I'm so concerned as that a vehicle might hit it. But we do get some rather interesting storms around here, especially since we're nestled between the Four Peaks and McDowell Mountains, and I've seen some storms kind of bounce back and forth. But I don't think I've ever seen any, other than trees snap, I don't think I've ever seen anything like a cell tower or a structure of that sort fall down. And I think maybe the question I got for it would really be for an engineer, but is the tower designed so to take a specific type of wind force? Because we get these downdrafts, or you hear about them all the time. How about we get these microbursts, and I've been witness to several of those out here in Fountain Hills, and they get pretty nasty.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Archibald, I'm not an engineer, but I do know that these are structurally engineered with a very high wind loading, and weight loading. So they are designed. They have typically on a 65-foot pole, they have a 20 to 30-foot deep caisson, steel and rebar encased caisson that these are connected to.
And that goes down. Yeah, I think you need to explain to the rest of the
30
council
foot
what
deep,
that is.
by 5 foot around of poured concrete with rebar. That's a maximum. I've seen them up, 20-foot depth with rebar. They're about 5 foot across for the diameter. And then there's the rebar comes up. It's bolted to the platform of these. They're 2 to 3 inch size bolts that go into these that hold them in place.
So these are kind of much designed like a traffic signal?
Yes, sir.
And I've seen some traffic signals, and I know how they're designed. They're designed to give and stretch and not necessarily just snap off when they're hit.
One of the factors in the wireless industry is the sway of the structures. They're limited to about 3 degrees, 3% sway. So, because it would offset your signal of the carrier signal going out. So there's very little sway in these. You've got a dozen or so sites out here and have had for 10 years. You've had these storms. Don't know that any of them come down.
Yeah, okay. I'm fairly comfortable with where it's located. I'm sure it would be engineered, and that's what I want. I really would have liked to have talked to the engineer, because I know that a lot of the rebar is designed, the reason we put rebar in concrete is not to make it, is to give it strength, but it's also to give it an opportunity to stretch and bend and give you a warning. Like with retaining walls. Retaining walls are designed to, if they're going to start giving, they start leaning. And that's your warning sign. Something's wrong. If you put too big a rebar in it, it becomes too stiff and tensile, and instead of it leaning, it just pops, and there's no warning at all. So that's why I wanted to understand how those particular towers are anchored in place, because you really, as an engineer, you have to consider the type of winds that we would get around here. And what I really wanted to know was, are they designed for 100-mile-an-hour winds? Or are they designed for 120-mile-an-hour winds?
I don't have that answer right now.
Yeah, okay. I've seen some 80-mile-an-hour winds out here that pretty much knock you down. You won't stand up.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. The surrounding properties, I know the theater's on town property, but does the condos or the art gallery, or was there any input from any of the neighbors?
No, we got no response from any of the surrounding properties.
What, was it solicited? I don't know. I don't know.
We send out
how we do this.
the legal letters. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Bob. The staff was objecting specifically because of the falling on the building. Is that, am I seeing that?
No, actually, the major objective was that it was falling across the right-of-way. We assumed that if the property owner wanted it to fall on their building, that was their problem.
But you were objecting to it falling across the right-of-way and not hitting the building. Okay. Most of the cell towers set on corners, do they not? Or near corners where if they did blow over, they'd be falling across right-of-way?
The last one that we did was in the middle of the park. There are a number of cell or communication cells on streetlights. Those are on town property, though.
Well, I personally don't see that this is a... as you very well know, I hate to go against any of the staff's decisions, but I don't. If if the school district doesn't mind it hitting their building, and they don't want it in their parking lot, I say no foul, no harm.
Thank you. Any other comments?
We're still in the public.
Yeah, we're still in the public hearing. All right, thank you, Bob. We'll close the public hearing and go on to item 12, consideration of the proposed special use permit as just presented. Do we have a motion?
Mayor? I
Councilmember
move to
Dickey.
approve the special use permit for Altel Communications to allow a 65-foot tall monopalm cell tower at 17322 Rand Drive, subject to the steps recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission as outlined in the staff report.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Vice Mayor.
Before we vote on this, the question I have is, this is permitted, this is inspected by our town, is that correct?
It will be, yes.
Even though it's on school property?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that, because I know we've had some other public entities around here that don't come to us for permitting.
All right, no more comments, questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Mayor,
Thank you.
6-1.
Thank you. All right. Next item, number 13, consideration of approving the cancellation of the Fountain Hills Town Council September 3rd, 2009 regular meeting due to the fact that the council will be attending the League of Arizona Cities and Towns annual conference that is scheduled to be held September 1 through September 4th, 2009 down in Oro Valley near Tucson. Do I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, so public knows, no meeting on our first Thursday of September, but we will be meeting on the third Thursday. Next item is quarterly update by Director of Planning and Zoning on activities and projects. Welcome, Richard.
Good evening, Mayor Schlummer, members of the Town Council. To begin my update, I would like to start with a brief recap of the general plan update that we've been involved in. That project started in the fall of 2007, and we made very good progress for the first few months. Then in January of 2008, the Elman companies filed their application on their acreage in the northeast part of the town for a general plan amendment and rezoning some other things. And we didn't want to divert attention from that application if we were going to compete with them with our general plan update. So we kind of put that on the back burner, and that slowed things down a bit. And then, as you recall, the Elman project was approved in May of 2008, and whereupon after that it was challenged in court, and that was all resolved in April of this year. And at that time we began with renewed purpose on the general plan update. The committee of the Planning Commission that's been established to review the general plan update has met twice in the last quarter. At their next meeting on August the 13th, they will have the opportunity to review a complete draft of that plan. We've also sent that plan to the various town departments for their comments, and so we're moving ahead with that nicely at this point in time. Next steps on that project, we would hope to finish the committee review this month in August, and then next month in September we will have the mandated state-required transmittal of the plan to state agencies and regional agencies. We will also put that on our website and invite the public to comment on it. We'll have a public open house, and all that takes place in September. We also plan to have work studies before the Town Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission in October, followed by public hearings, 2 public hearings at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Because the town population is now 25,000 people, we're required to have 2 public hearings at the Planning Commission level in different locations, and then the council consideration in December. So that's what that program looks like going forward. Also this quarter we had a lot of activity in regulation changes. At the top of the list here you'll see illegal construction site activity. That is on your agenda next Tuesday at your work study. Very briefly, that is a regulation that would address the negative impacts associated with a construction activity that's frankly gone on a little too long and has negative impacts on neighboring property. Next on the list is the sign ordinance changes, and you'll recall that we recently amended our sign ordinance to address A-frame signs. We made a change there, giving a lot more flexibility in where A-frame signs could be located on properties. I think you'll find that a lot of our businesses have taken advantage of that opportunity, and hopefully their business has improved because of it. Also, we allowed bigger signs for bigger stores. We also, the Planning Commission had established a committee to look at the next item on the list, an alternative for satisfying the public art requirement. That committee has met and will be providing their recommendation to the Planning Commission at their next meeting again on August the 13th. The committee is going to recommend that an applicant have a choice of where their public art requirement goes, whether it go to a solid piece of art or to the performing arts. And that ultimately will take the form of an ordinance. Then there will be public hearings, and the town council will ultimately have the final say on that. And then finally on this list is the site disturbance rules. You will recall on May the 28th you had a work study and you reviewed the proposed changes to the subdivision regulation and the zoning ordinance, and staff has started in on those changes, and we realized there's lots of tentacles to those regulations. They wind their way through all of our rules, and so it's taking us some time to work through that. Raymond Reese, our environmental planner, has been a very busy guy. Top of this list, you'll see trash and recycling collection. Currently, in the town attorney's office is a request for to review and prepare a request for a proposal for a single hauler, and that is due sometime towards the end of this month. Next on the list is the Fly-Tight Container Inspection Program. This is necessary to maintain a variance that the town was granted by Maricopa County. The county has asked us for reports of inspections of trash containers. That was a condition of approval of the variance. The variance was granted to the town to allow us to have or our residents to have one trash and one recycle pickup each week as opposed to 2 trash pickups. And we've been trying to take a very low-key approach to this program, a very educational approach. And our requirement is that we have to look at 25% of the trash containers in town each year. Next, green pools has been a hot topic for our code enforcement section. It occupies a lot of their time because every time they get a green pool complaint, they have to track down or attempt to track down the ownership. And because of a lot of the foreclosures, that's quite a challenging task nowadays. Our current, in terms of caseload, in July we had 10 green pool complaints or reports. We had 3 of them last week. In the last quarter we had 40, and the quarter previous to that we had 21. We've also met with representatives of Maricopa County Vector Control to do a better job of coordinating our efforts, and we have agreed that when they treat a green pool, they're going to be using they have a briquette, which is a pesticide, and they're going to be using that in lieu of the fish that eat the mosquito larvae, because if that pool gets drained, the fish die. But if you have a briquette that's a solid pesticide at the bottom of the pool and you get a rainfall and there's a little pool, that pesticide still works. So you can still kill the mosquitoes or the larvae. And in terms of West Nile virus, I was on the county's website just the other day, and that reports that there are 5 cases in Maricopa County to date this year. And but since most people who contract that disease don't even know they've had it, and if they do realize it, it's like flu-like symptoms. So there's probably a lot more people who have been contracted West Nile. And finally, I would just like to report a few workload measurements in terms of the building permits and inspections. In the first quarter of this calendar year, we issued 110 building permits, and in the second quarter, we issued 103. So a slight drop-off there. In terms of building inspections, in the first quarter of the calendar year, we conducted 1,160, and in the second quarter, 1,275, so a slight increase there. In terms of zoning violations and investigations, in the first quarter of the calendar year, we had 254, and in the second quarter, 265, so we picked up a little activity there. And finally, our GIS CAD section, they have a new reporting system that's went into effect just this last quarter. And based on the reports that we get out of that system, they're averaging 67 requests for service per month. And most of that work is done to support the Public Works Department and their efforts. And most of the projects that are submitted to that division for completion and service are completed within 10 hours of receipt. So they can take care of a lot of those projects, and they're doing a very good job of providing excellent customer service. So that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any questions from council? Great. Appreciate the update. Thank you very much. All right, next item, number 15, is consideration of authorizing the mayor to execute a letter approving the town manager's participation in peer review sessions in 2009, one in Clearfield, Utah, and the second in Parkland, Florida. Rick, what is this all about?
Excuse me, Mayor, Council, when I came on board and we negotiated a contract with you, one of the things that I surfaced at that time made really obvious that I had enjoyed in the past the opportunity of being asked to participate in a process that's very similar to a peer review, and I actually was asked to lend some help to a couple of communities in Florida, Delray Beach and Daytona Beach. And those were very successful, enjoyable opportunities that aided a lot of my education. I brought back a lot of ideas to my community, and I stated about a year ago that such possibilities may one day surface again, and sure enough they have. They are really, I am honored to be asked to participate in these. It is an honor and a privilege to participate in these. And Clearfield, Utah, obviously is the city that borders West Point, Utah. You might have heard of that city. And so for them to ask me to come back and help them with an issue, this is on my time, my dime type of thing, that's a great privilege. I thought they would be tired of me by now, but evidently they wanted me back and asking me, it'd be like Scottsdale asking me to come back, an adjacent community, to help them out. The other one is Parkland, Florida, and that's basically a product of the work that I'd done with Daytona Beach and Delray Beach, and they'd asked me to help them with an issue. So this is a great privilege. In light of not going to ICMA conference, these experiences could actually aid me in my credentialing. Might be able to. We'll see if it's applicable. But just appreciate you being open to the opportunity and the educational opportunity that this presents to me.
All right, thank you. And again, you're bringing it before us because as part of your contract, these items need to come before us and receive our approval. All right. Now, I see benefit to you, as we discussed previously, that these experiences will benefit Fountain Hills, and you are utilizing your vacation time to do these
It's not considerable either. In fact, I probably won't be, in one case, I may not be gone at all, and it would just be done kind of remotely, and then the other case will be done on a Friday. Very little time, if any. Might blend into a day that a vacation I take, but I don't know that at that time. What's great about this also is that when you're coming from outside, you can try things, suggest things, and probe ideas that you never get away with in your home community because, prophet's not respected in his own country kind of thing. And so I can use them as guinea pigs to try out new ideas and initiatives. I hope they're not watching this. But.
Thank you. Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, I'd move to approve authorizing you, to the mayor to execute a letter approving town manager's participation in peer review sessions in 2009 in Clearfield, Utah, and Parkland, Florida. Specific dates to be provided, yet to be determined.
All right. Do we have a second?
I wanted to move to approve for him to be a guinea pig.
Guinea pig. Exactly. All right, Vice Mayor, second. Any other questions or dialogue? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Keep in mind, Council Mayor, that if these things come, they're very infrequent, but if one comes along, we'd follow the same methodology. So if it appears again, I get to go somewhere else, and my wife's very appreciative of somebody taking me and feeding me for a weekend, and she doesn't have to worry about it. So she's very in favor of this, getting me out of the house.
I doubt that. All right, thank you. Good luck to those cities. That's all I have to say. All right, next item, 16, quarterly update by the town manager on implementing his auditing skills, council goals.
Yes. Just to be brief, obviously in February 2008, identified 8 primary goals for the last fiscal year. And in short, and this illustration shows up on the screen, we're very happy to report to you that all of your goals were realized for the last fiscal year, excepting obviously the one pertaining to assuring responsible development of the element property for reasons that we have talked about before. And probably in the goal in the future ought to maybe be phrased in maybe a little bit different ways that allows us a chance to accomplish things so it's within our circle of influence, as I like to say a lot. And I think this one just fell outside of our circle of influence. There's not a lot we could do about that one. But the other goals were accomplished, and we're very happy to present those to you.
Good, thank you.
I compliment our staff also. They really did a tremendous job this year, not only in coming in under budget, but also way under budget, because we had to, as you know, we had to cut a considerable amount out of the budget and still came into the black, and that is to their credit and also the realization of these goals. We are very fortunate to have the staff that we do.
Hear, hear. Very good.
Mayor?
Appreciate it. Councilmember Dickey.
Just a quick question, Rick. Has staff had any updates from Elman on their activities or progress or any word at all?
I have not. Any of you? We have not.
Okay.
Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thanks. I wanted to comment on the implementing the environmental plan, just because I wanted to mention that we are working on getting volunteers together too, which was part of implementing the plan, and I'm very pleased that we're going ahead with that, and I just wanted to say that here at this time, and thank you, because we've been having meetings and things like that, and it's good to say in public that I appreciate what we're doing.
Good. Anyone else? We approve your progress. Thank you. All right. I was going to take a break, but I think we're close enough to the end. We can get through this. Is everybody all right? All right, good. The next item is 17, discussion with possible direction of staff relating to information to be gathered and topics to be covered at our planned September 8th, 2009 Town Council Work Study Session, including discussion of officials' respective roles under the council manager form of government. Rick?
Yeah, some weeks ago, the mayor and I met, as we often do, and he thought, in light of some of the results that we've gotten out of our feedback we've gotten from the public, and also because having a new council member on and having two new council members that came on last year, that it was probably an opportune time to make some clarifications, or at least give a refresher course from the league as to our form of government, and this would be also something that would benefit the public watching on. Form of government is a really tricky thing, and in other states there's been no end of discussion and debate about form of government, and confusion as well. In the state that I came from, 1 year the legislature floated a bill that would have mandated all cities to have a council manager form of government, and in the subsequent year they floated a bill that would have eliminated council manager form of government. This is something that we need to understand. I think the public, this is good for the public as well, and so that's why we contacted the league, and I believe Tom Belshey will be with us to present that information.
That's good. They're a good group to help us with that. But just to be clear, my intention in discussion with Rick and then also Councilmember Dickey and Vice Mayor Archambault spoke to me further about the preparing ourselves for the work study session and the agenda, particularly to make sure it covers everything we want to have it covered. My intention is not to consider changing our form of government or anything like that. I think it's working quite well, and I believe in the state of Arizona, aren't all
90
municipalities
are
have
council
this
managers.
format.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking at changing from the council manager form of government. It's just that I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to be kind of, in essence, trained on or refreshed on what we can do as council members, how we are to interact with one another and staff, and not open meeting laws. Those are other things that we go about. But I thought at this meeting tonight we could make sure that anything we might have questions on, we might bring up to staff so that you can best be prepared and working with the league to handle that work study session for us next month.
I appreciate that. It should be noted that, especially for those in the public, that the council manager form of government has been the dominant form of local government governance for the last 100 years. So that's significant. This is a well-tested form of government, and the majority of larger cities live with this form of government, and over 90 million Americans live in communities where the council manager form of government is the form of government in their community.
I have a couple of things, and then I'll see what else other folks have to add. Probably a couple things that similar folks have is, one thing is I'd like to have is just to talk about the format and why is this a popular way to go, and the structure of it. And then the second thing is council member individual authority versus the overall group or agreed authority. When we work as obviously we're up here on a council, we need a majority vote to go do things, to talk about that. And then also, probably more for our staff to bring into the mix is to fold into the town code and what those things that guide council members on duties and responsibilities. Those are the three areas. Is that right, the code, where we find some of those items? Those are some of the things I thought of. But other than that, have a pretty open dialogue. Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. I did want this item on the agenda. I really appreciate it so that we could discuss maybe the parameters or at least let me communicate what I hope to accomplish at that meeting. I welcome this opportunity to address specifically council interactions with staff in a way that I hope will allow for recommendations and direction from the league and from each other to improve conditions in the future. I felt the need to bring this forward so that we could all be together at once, talk about these things, and talk and listen about how we can move towards some resolutions to any conflicts that we have or that may have been occurring over the past months, and become very familiar with the codes, as we just mentioned, codes and laws that guide our ethical behavior, which is something that some folks have asked us to look into, and proper procedures. I think that the session on September 8th will provide that forum. I'm not calling to take any formal steps at this time. Our staff, like a lot of people these days, and the economy or whatever, is stressed and trying to do more with less. And as a councilwoman, I feel responsible to do what I can to try and alleviate some anxiety and fear or any kind of uncomfortable situations in the workplace before it can erode all of our abilities to serve this community. That's why we're all here. So I thank you, Mayor, and I thank this council for this chance to explain why I wanted to see this on there for next month. And I hope, and I guess this is part of the expectation for what I hope and expect, is that we'll come full circle with serious and honest and courageous discussion, conversation, effort to define and confirms our rights, also our limitations, our responsibilities to each other and to staff, and of course, as to the community at large. So I thank you for bringing this forward.
Yeah, that reminds me, the other thing that I think this is going to be beneficial to, and hopefully we won't have a problem getting this perhaps on Channel 11, broadcast as a work study, is I think this is going to help the public a lot. I think, when you go through the election process, or in particular, you have the public say, you need to go do this, or you need to go do that, or they think for the most part that we're able to tell staff what to do. Or we probably all had that where, can't you go tell somebody to go do this? And that's not the role of council. But there's numerous things, a lot of misconceptions, and it's all about, how I put it is, the council often operates kind of as the board of directors, and then the staff, led by Rick Davis, are the CEO, kind of the president of the organization. They get the job done, and they do it based on the guidelines and principles and policies that the council sets forward. But I think it'll be very good for the public as well. So I appreciate the league willing to send out their top brass to talk about it as well. Anybody else have thoughts on this to add to, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I too asked to have this on our agenda so that I can give a little bit more specific direction. I was looking at, the town council and manager form of government, and I'd like, Bev, if you're taking the notes, I'd like to have them address the broad authority of a manager to run the town. How far does his authority go? Where's his line at? I'd like to discuss the differences between setting policy and giving direction. I think the council as a whole tries to set policy, but I think sometimes we fall into the trap of trying to give direction instead of setting policy as a group. I'd also like to have them cover what it means to say to equitably serve the community. Oftentimes we lose sight of the fact that we get a specific group comes to us, or we get somebody that's driven for a particular cause, but it doesn't serve the community. Their cause doesn't serve the community, and I have to fight all the time and sit back and say, is this good for the community as a whole? So I think we need to clarify what that term means, so that in our eyes, when we're talking, who is it coming out? Tom? Bob? Yeah, Tom. They can cover that in maybe a little bit of a broader sense, but maybe drill down on that a little bit. And then I think, Mayor, you've already talked about, let's talk about the authority of individual council member as compared to the body as a whole. Okay. And when do we engage the residents in policy making? That's often a point that I think gets lost on the council, because citizens look to us to make decisions, but oftentimes we lose sight of the fact that there's a point where we can't make that decision as a body. We have to go to the citizens for that, and I'd like to have some direction on that, or at least some discussion on that, because I think that'll bring back a lot of things that we voted on in the past, bring back recollections to say, well, maybe we should have gone to the public, maybe we should have had a public hearing on something. I know we kind of did that to death, Andrew, back in 2002, 2003, and we kind of got away from that, which is kind of good, because I thought we were doing way too much of that. But I think we have to recognize as a whole, and we have to train ourselves to identify when we should go to the public and not make the decision for them. Let's see. Let's see if we could expand on the manager's roles in regards to his duties of running the town and making the day-to-day decisions. Rick, I think you could maybe expand on that. You're going to be there at that session, right? So I think sometimes I don't quite understand exactly. I know the general rules and regulations that you follow, but I think what's more important to me is I would like to know the difference between a manager that's ICMA certified and one that's not.
Okay.
And I think that covers the areas that I would like to cover.
I was going to add that as well. It reminded me that, because Rick, you've stated some things when we've run into your role responsibility. You've stated sometimes to us in email or directly about your ICMA responsibilities and things you need to follow. That'd probably be helpful, where you see fit to include that in our work study.
As you know, all members of ICMA are committed to a code of ethics, a set of tenets, but a credentialed manager that you're referring to, an ICMA CM, is a certification or a credentialing that recognizes tenure in the profession, as well as certain skill levels. And the third segment of that is a commitment to lifelong or career-long learning in the profession. In fact, it's quite forced upon me. I'm required to do a considerable amount of training every year and then report on that and then give a new report the following year. And so it's quite involved. As I've had residents ask me, and I've had friends ask me, what does a city manager do as opposed to a mayor or a council? The best way, because most people are familiar with the corporate structure, I've been able to give the example of a corporate organizational structure where you have a chairman of the board who would be the mayor and a board of directors who would be the council, and then you have a chief executive officer to whom the CEO reports to. The chair or the board members represent the stockholders. The people who have ownership in that organization would be the citizens, people who have purchased stock. And when I explained it like that, they usually go, I see the relationship now.
Vice Mayor, you had one more item?
Yeah, I had one more item, and it has to do with staff. I'd like to see if there's a discussion we could have on staff's roles and council's roles and interactions. I know that, Rick, you give us the latitude to go to staff, ask questions. We get our agenda packets, and I'll just call Richard up and I'll say, what's up with this? And I appreciate that. One of the things that I find a little bit confusing is sometimes I feel I walk into staff's office and they just drop what they're doing, which is not what I want them to do. But I feel that there's that, what do you want to call it, mentality there that, here's an elected official walking into my office, so I'm just going to stop what I'm doing. And there's a certain amount of respect that I think has to be transferred back and forth. And so I'd just like to maybe get a little bit of a discussion about what would be appropriate for council. So we can find some lines, should we call ahead, make an appointment to see that staff member instead of just call and say, hey, do this, do that, give me some answers on this.
Yeah, I've had elected officials that have done both, and I've never begrudged them doing either one. I've had council members that would schedule a specific time. We all have one-on-ones with each other, and these are very definite, specified times. And I enjoy those thoroughly, and we get a lot of discussion down. I think my shortest one's probably 2 hours. I take too much of your time when we're out doing that. Sometimes we could go even later. But with regard to the staff, my recommendation is ask them what they prefer. And I think also we've talked about the subject as staff numerous times, and I'm fairly confident that whether as an elected official or as a citizen walking in, they would have the same reaction to that. And that's what I like most about our staff.
Well, I would like maybe some input from staff on how they would like us to maybe interact.
It might vary from
person. I understand that, but there should be some kind of general guidelines that we can kind of go by.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Contino.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just agree with Vice Mayor Archambault, because there are some times that I go up and talk to somebody and I'll say good morning to them. And then I say, by the way, and they say, go ahead and ask it, So, I'm like I just don't feel like I want to impose on them. But, they've always been very accommodating for what we want to do.
That reminds me, it's good. Staff input would be great, or if there's things we're not, asking that staff feels that would help us to have a better relationship, be the high-performing functioning town that we want to be.
Yep.
So if there's other input to add, that may be another meeting, how we all work best together, but, Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, I wanted to thank Councilman Leger because he thought to ask for the explanation of council manager form of government. It was actually pretty good. We all got this in the email, and I think that'll help serve as a guide. And again, I just want to stress that meeting, I want to bring honest, courageous conversation to that meeting.
Good. And then, as we always do, I'll look to have professional, respectful, and dignified dialogue that is focused on adding value to our community. And I think you guys will bring that every day, so that's what I'll be looking for. Anything else for this topic? So no action on there other than the notes maybe were followed. I've got them here written down as well for some of the agenda items brought up. Next item is 18, discussion with possible direction to the town manager, town attorney, and litigation counsel regarding the Fire Rock tax litigation. Do we have a motion on this item? Oh, well, thank you.
We should just jettison out here. I think we need a break. Oh.
That's
I got a motion
Councilmember
here.
Hanson's removed herself from here, so thank you, Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to move to authorize and direct the town's litigation counsel, the town manager, and the town attorney to take all steps necessary to conclude the Fire Rock's tax litigation and to pay the amounts necessary to satisfy the stipulated judgment entered in the case.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 6-0.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Hanson. All right, item 19, council discussion direction to the town manager. I don't know of any other than what we added for our work study. All right. Number 20, summary council request and reported on recent activities by town manager.
I have none. Be sure to check out the blog if you haven't. I do put things out there on a regular basis. I do have one follower right now. I'm building an audience slowly. Thank you, Councilmember Hanson, for signing up for that. So Cassie and I are in very, very tight contact now. We got the box. I'll actually print those out and put those in your box just in case you haven't seen the past ones. And you can see if that's designed to do, the blog's designed to do, is allow me to be a little bit more descriptive in in broader issues, not
And
just.
he gets really descriptive.
Yeah, so take some time, take it home, give yourself a few hours to read.
Well, I appreciate your effort because you're just looking to communicate with us in any manner that helps us all be on the page of Rick Davis.
Every way.
All right. I think it's motion to adjourn time. All right, all in favor, stand up and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Now we can.
Thank you.